Hello, in this lecture we are going to begin considering what we might describe as the me-we balance, or looking at different cultural differences in collectivism and individualism and how they affect what we define as the good life and how we come to understand happiness and positive psychology in general. I love this map right here because it really shows a couple of things, especially that we may not think so much about if we're very United States centric. And one is that quite a bit of the world is more we balanced than me balanced. That is, they're more collectivistic than individualistic. So the green and the yellow and even parts of the orange really are countries that we would think of as more collectivistic. Really, it's only those red countries, the US, Canada, Western Europe, and Australia, that are very me balanced or me centric, more individualistic. And so I think what's really important, and probably framing all of this lecture right here, is that while positive psychology has ultimately the goal to look at all cultures and values, to really understand what is good and to inform positive psychology research and practice, really the Eastern perspective has really largely been ignored to date. And it isn't quite as clear from this specific graph right here, but one of the largest and most influential countries right now, China, according to many researchers, and including Oyserman and colleagues, China is probably one of the world's most collectivistic countries. Something else that's also really important is that, especially if we come from a sort of psychology of the United States, is that the individualistic views are not widely shared around the world. As high as probably 70% of the world would be considered more collectivistic than individualistic. Of course, this is always on a spectrum. But if you were to put people into one of two camps, probably about 4.5 billion individuals would be considered collectivistic and or live in collectivistic countries, whereas only 2 billion people would be more considered individualistic. And so, again, from a sort of United States perspective, we might see ourselves as more individualistic, but the world probably sees itself as more collectivistic. So I want to really emphasize that individualism and the psychology of me versus the psychology of we, neither one of these are sort of right or the wrong ways to sort of live. They're really different sort of foci, with, for example, individualism really having an emphasis on rights of the individual above duties to the collective. The concern is for oneself, but also one's immediate family, so it's not sort of a selfish psychology if you want to think of it that way. There's an emphasis on self-fulfillment and personal autonomy, and also one's identity is really a reflection of one's personal accomplishments, and we'll sort of see that as a difference compared to collectivism. Again, not that collectivism is wrong or is right, that individualism is wrong or right. It's just sort of different ways of looking at value systems and what you sort of emphasize as the important values in people's lives. The psychology of me and individualism is probably best captured by some writings in the Democracy of America, and obviously had an impact on Herbert Hoover, who really described the American system in and of itself as a self-reliant, sort of rugged individualism, and that value system that's really coming from, at this point, the executive office, really had an impact on important policies, specifically that government should try and interfere as the least amount possible with different types of individual businesses and larger businesses as well. So individualism, or sort of the psychology of me, really the conceptualization here is the focus on the individual. It's the focus on the personal, focusing on personal goals, personal uniqueness, personal control. And it's not that concerns for the group or that social structures aren't important at all. It's just that they're minimized. So sort of collective goals or sort of collective fate is just less important. And so it's more the concerns of the individual are really more important or take up greater concern than concerns for the group. Again, not that the group is not important at all. And so if you really want to think of sort of this psychology of me, individualism, the United States, this land of the rugged individualist, the sort of mentality that anyone who works hard can achieve, what you really see is an emphasis in individualism in three important areas. So this sort of sense of independence, that I'm independent from others and in their influence and in direction. That we have a specific need to feel unique, to be unique, to express ourselves, to be different from others, and really importantly, that as the book nicely describes, that the self is really the unit of analysis here, and what that ultimately means is that when I think about things, going back on this slide here, the goals that I have, they're goals for the self. The sort of progression of my happiness and my well-being is really how I'm going to measure sort of the good life. And that is compared to collectivism. And one of the most important assumptions in collectivism is that the group membership mutually binds and obligates individuals together. So as opposed to these very specific sort of individual goals and personal goals, you really see a social unit as the important unit of analysis. So thinking about your common fate and your common goals and the common values that you have within your group, these much larger groups in the immediate family, that's really what's maximized. And that really, as an individual, you're sort of a larger component of the in-group. And so the success of whatever group you belong to in that group usually can be very large. So, for example, for us, that might be San Francisco State. It might be your company. It might be your family way out extended into your second and third cousins, and that the success and the face of those larger groups is really sort of the key to sort of looking good. And so really the concern for the group is greater than the concern for the individual, because the individual really is just a component of this larger group. And if you look in this, there's lots of different types of, this is an individualism, collectivism scale. It really shows you on the far left all the different types of domains that go into individualism and all the different domains that go into collectivism. A sort of description of each of these. This would probably be a good place, since these videos are very quick, to sort of pause here and read the different types of descriptions. To read some of these sample items, you could, if you wanted to, you could just use a 1 to 5 scale for your own self and see how much you agree or disagree with each of these different types of statements. But one of the things that I want to point out is that, for example, in a collectivistic culture, duty to the group is really important, and that one's individual success and satisfaction really comes from this feeling that you fulfilled your duties as a member of the group, right? So if you look at this row down here where we see duty as an important domain, the duties and sacrifices of being part of a group is really important to you. You can see an exemplar question here, like I would help within my means if any relative were in financial difficulty, right? So thinking about that this is part of the duty that you have as a group, and that when you would, in this case, help financially, this would allow you to feel a lot of pleasure as being part of the group. Compared to something like independence up here in the individualistic scale. I tend to do things on my own, and others in my family do the same, right? So that's a very different sort of model of how you're going to derive your sort of satisfaction in life. All right, so this will be the first half of this lecture, and we will pause here.